Okay, so I'd like to thank everyone that spoke before me because you've all covered pretty much everything I was going to talk about, so I'll be able to get through my talk very, very quickly. So I'm going to give you some opinions that I have about the use of antimicrobials in poultry, based on the fact that I'm a consulting veterinarian. I work in the poultry industry. I've worked with food producing animals for my entire career, and so that hopefully you can understand some of the challenges that I face in day-to-day medicine when I'm treating my patients. So first of all, for those of you that don't know anything about the poultry industry in Australia, it's very difficult to counter the factoids that we get about intensive animal production systems when we are faced with graphic images of production systems in every other country of the world except ours. And this is Australia, and we don't look like India, we don't look like a whole bunch of countries. And so it's very difficult to actually get a right of reply to that. So first of all, the chicken egg industry. It's small, it's family owned, they're mostly private businesses, and there's a small number of large businesses. The chicken meat industry is also small, 7 companies. It's vertically integrated, which means they own and operate all parts of the chain, and it's also largely family owned. So that's the first thing that you need to understand about our industry. It's small. So that then means that there's not a very large number of veterinarians as a result of that. But it employs a relatively large number of people. 13,000 people at the last count were employed directly by poultry industry. They are major employers, particularly in our regional towns and cities. They are also employers of people that would be considered to be marginal, have poor education, that don't have other educational opportunities or work opportunities. And so they are people that need employment. So the things I do in my veterinary practice directly affect people every day. Here are my patients. I was at the Antimicrobial Forum in Brisbane a couple of weeks ago, and I noted that one of the doctors said that children aren't small adults. Well, chickens aren't ducks, ducks aren't turkeys, turkeys, and amazingly enough, small ducklings and chicks aren't also large ducklings, ducks and chicks, and neither are layers or broilers. So let's put it in perspective. You eat my patients, and not only that, you like eating my patients. In fact, this is how much you like eating my patients. You eat 231 eggs per person per annum. You eat 49 kilograms of chicken meat per annum. That is higher than the Americans. They only eat 46 kilos, which is not something to be proud of because we're only, I think, second or third in the total amount of meat we consume per annum. But that's 660 million chickens that we consume in Australia. It's all made in Australia, it's all grown in Australia, it's not imported. The same with eggs, so we eat 5.5 billion fresh eggs, either cooked or made into cake or fresh. So they're all produced here by our farmers, by our people. So here's what happens. These are the conflicts that I'm faced with every day when I have to treat my patients or not, as the case may be. 99% of my time is spent dealing with healthy animals. I do prevention. I spend most of my time driving to farm to make sure that their biosecurity is good, to make sure that we have all our preventive animal health programs good. I talk to people about their ventilation. I talk to them about their litter quality. I talk to them about their hatchery management. I talk to them about problems that we have with fertility. I talk to them about growth and live weight and performance. That's what I spend 99.9% of my time. In the last 5 years, I have written 0 prescriptions for antibiotics because I don't see disease, because we have amazing vaccination going on in our facilities. And so we can get rid of quite a lot of those problems that we used to see. In fact, we've surveyed some of the vets, and what they said was, and I quote, A, we need more antibiotics, but B, those diseases that you've asked us about, we don't see anymore. And that's the reality. So we don't see them. But our issues relate to safety, residues, productivity. I can't put antibiotics into my poultry because they only live for 35 days if it's a broiler. So the withholding period of 14 days means that I have to get in there, I have to diagnose the disease, it has to occur in the first 14 days of life. And if I'm going to treat them with an antibiotic that has a 14-day meat withholding, then I have to have done it within that first 14 days of life. That's a pretty big challenge. And then if you say to me, what I'm going to do is I want you to get a culture out of that animal. I want you to send that to the laboratory. I need to know what the sensitivity is to that disease so that I can then use the appropriate antibiotic on that animal. Now imagine my dilemma. 5 days, 7 days, then I might get a report in time. It's too late, I can't treat then. I have to decide if I'm going to treat, I have to decide today. I can't wait 7 days. 7 days, you're going to be eating them. All right, so that's the reality of what it's like as a broiler producing veterinarian for broiler production. What about eggs, you say? Well, they live for 90 weeks. That's great, I've got plenty of time, but most of the antibiotics that I can use in layers can't be used in hens that might produce eggs for human consumption. That's their whole life. So I can't use those drugs of choice. So, the one beautiful thing that we have managed to do exceptionally well in the poultry industry and in most of our intensive livestock industries, I'm not going to say it's just poultry, we have all-in and all-out production. We've changed our management systems so that we can manage disease, we can get rid of it. Cleaning and disinfection. My farms spend all their time cleaning and disinfecting premises. These are agricultural premises. There's dirt there. There's a whole bunch of stuff there. But it's agriculture. It's not a sterile hospital. Okay? So when you tell me that you can't get around to washing your hands in a hospital, awesome. We have very strict biosecurity. Why? Because we don't want avian influenza. Why? Because you want to kill our chickens if we get avian influenza. Not even worried about antimicrobial resistance. You know, you're going to dissipate my industry if we get an outbreak of avian influenza. The response to that is to kill them. So we'll shut down in 2 seconds. And of course we have vaccines, and we have lots and lots of vaccines. But here's the good news. We don't have all these really nasty bugs that we talk about in the media all the time. We don't have Salmonella enteritidis in the commercial poultry industry, and we certainly don't have multi-drug resistant Salmonella enteritidis. We don't have DT104. We don't have vancomycin resistant enterococci. We certainly don't have fluoroquinolone resistant CAMPI. But we do have E. coli. We have avian pathogenic E. coli, we have erythropelothrix, we have pasteurellosis, we have necrotic enteritis, and we have spotty liver. All of those diseases cause high morbidity and high mortality. And we have limited or very few vaccines available that are efficacious for mass application for poultry, and or cover all of the different serotypes that are available or that we experience. So those are the diseases that if we're going to treat are probably the most likely diseases we will treat. And to be honest, a lot of those diseases are diseases we see now because there's an increased demand for free-range production. We stopped seeing erysipelas. That's a disease that existed 20 years ago that we didn't see in chickens, and we now see. Pasteurellosis, we don't see that in commercial chickens. We see that in our free-range chickens because they're exposed to wild birds. E. coli, well, you know, E. coli, it's just there. So, Charles has already gone through this. Well, we can't use gentamicin. We have no fluoroquinolones, no cephalosporins, chloramphenicol, nitrofurans, carbadox, streptomycin, avaparsin are registered for use in poultry. All right? We have a policy. We don't use those. Those of us that are following our prescribing guidelines don't use those drugs. They're not available for mass medication, even if they were, and I don't know about you, but I see my patients 60,000 at a time, and so I haven't got time to inject one of them each. day I'll be there for days. It takes 5 days to vaccinate a flock of 5,000 birds. So here are the drugs that we use. You'll note on the right that they all have low to medium rating for human importance in Australia. And you can see that, yes, we have quite a list, but to be fair, they're all bacteriostats mostly, and most of them we wouldn't use simply because the withholding period's too long. So yes, they're registered, but are we using them routinely? I would argue no. Chlorotetracycline, yes. Amoxicillin, amazingly enough, it's on the list. Guess what? This year, first year ever, we got to use that with 0 days withholding in egg-laying hens. This year. It's 0 withholding in every other country in the world except Australia. So now we actually have something that we can use to treat erysipelas in hens instead of watching them die. And they don't just die in 1s or 2s. They die in 20 and 30% of the flock. So if you don't think that has some significant effect on not only animal health, but human welfare, then I need you to come and talk to some of my clients. So we know these are the challenges. The challenges are that we have quite a low impetus for change in the poultry industry. We keep getting repeated messages that we have low antimicrobial resistance, that we have low antimicrobial use, but we also have poor empirical evidence to suggest that a reduction in our current use will result in a change in our current resistance patterns. That's the actual problem that we have right now. We don't know what effect that's going to have down the track. Will it make a difference, or will it just be more of the same that we already have? It's highly unlikely we're going to have new antimicrobials, because if we get them, humans will get them first. So I will only get them once they fail in people. Well, that's true, right? We have very few registered antimicrobials, as I've already described. Charles has already thankfully described that. We don't know, more importantly, what the unintended or unknown consequences are of all the alternatives to antibiotics. There's plenty of them that we're using, phytates. Are they going to create the same resistance problem that we currently have, just in new form? We just don't know yet. We have supermarket/consumer-driven expectations for antimicrobial use. In fact, you spoke beautifully about all those issues that I have as a food production veterinarian. The companies decide based on the market that they sell in. The market dictates what they will or won't do, or what they put in their chickens, because they demand it from their auditing. So I don't have very much influence at all. If the supermarket has declared that it will be free range, it will be free range, whether I give you good advice or not. And then we have the second biggest problem, which is global franchises making announcements. This is about market share. This isn't about food health. This isn't about food safety. This isn't about whether this is going to reduce resistance in the human population. Sorry, call me a cynic. That is what KFC and McDonald's want. They want to make you to buy their product. And then we have the added pressure that the WHO makes announcements that we can't use antibiotics, and that's quite challenging. But most of all, the thing that frustrates me the most is the cry for the One Health. One Health, we must work together. We've been crying that for 20 years. But the biggest problem is trust. You have to trust us that we can look after our animals, just as we have to trust that you can look after my clients. So where's the future, I ask you? Well, it's here. It's what you want. I'm 100% antibiotic free. It's on the shelves today. You can buy it. It was released last week at the AMF forum. What does this mean though? Does it mean there's no antibiotics inside it? Is it going to increase the perception that we're using all this amazing amount of antibiotics? Because look, note that it's also got no added hormones or steroids. So let's reinforce a really bad message that we don't use them anyway, right? Does it mean there's going to be no antibiotic resistance genes? A reduction in resistance genes? Compromised welfare? Those are the things I have to face. Compromised welfare. My choice with no antibiotics and antibiotic-free production means that I have to euthanize those birds that are sick. That is the only option. Safer food. Of course the food is safe. We can't sell it unless it's safe as it can be. Is it going to result in an increased cost of food? Yes, it is. Did you see the price of that chicken? $14.60. It's being sold for $21 a kilo, which is the same cost as beef. And I don't know about you, but I don't eat beef, I eat chicken. And I'm happy to pay $5 a kilo for my chicken, and I'm even more happy to pay for my eggs, which are cheaper again. So, is that going to have an unintended effect on human health and nutrition? Because the cheapest meat on the market that the population is demanding is now going to be the price of beef. And I know a whole lot of egg producers that could put that stamp on their product today. So now we're going to have antibiotic-free eggs. Is our cheapest, most economical source of protein, of high quality protein, now going to be the price of beef? That's the consequence. That's all I have.